Story 1. 7. 3K. R. Malicious Compliance. Posted by UDO_Bean. 17 hours ago. 2. Exclamation mark. Last update. Boss told me to deep clean the back. And to not come to the front for any reason, so I did. Lock. First off, I would like to thank you all for reading my posts, making me laugh with your comments, and supporting me through these ungodly events. This will be the last part of this story. I have a bunch of different stories that I would love to share in the future. Sunday. Day of freedom. I pull up to my work parking lot and sit in my car for 10 minutes before my shift starts. I see my annoying manager get out of his car and walk by my car looking at me with a 1,000-yard stare. Finally, I decided to get out of my car. I take a deep breath and start walking. I'm inside the restaurant and a couple of the servers that I like are talking to me and saying how they're going to miss me and they congratulate me on the new job. The other servers overheard and were surprisingly also excited for me, which I wasn't expecting because I thought they didn't like me, and that's when I realized that they weren't trying to be mean to me or not like me. It's just that they have been dealing with the manager's tantrums for over a year and are just exhausted. I had made up my mind to maliciously comply to everything he said to me that day. The owner came in to eat with his family after church, and my manager came up to me and told me to focus on their table and no one else's. He really needs to learn how to phrase his sentences better, lol. So I did. For their entire stay I made sure they had all their needs covered. You need water, I got you. More ketchup, no problem. Fresh coffee, I'm your man. The owner pulls me aside and thanked me for working so hard, and said that every time he would come in he would always see me doing anything I could to help. He thanked me again and calls over the annoying manager and proceeded to ask, "Why is Op leaving us? You never really told me why." Then my manager in his usual condescending tone tells me to tell him all of my reasons why I'm leaving. I never told him any reasons, so obviously I complied. I told the owner everything. I told him how he treats the staff, how I'm only making $8 per hour, how he just sits on his computer for hours and doesn't help with any of the manager duties, etc. My manager's face was blood red, but not out of anger but out of anxiety and damn near shitting himself. The owner looked at me and told me I can go somewhere else and that he needed to speak with him alone. The owner ripped him a new one, which I thought was impossible since they were church buddies. But the church doesn't protect you from being yelled at. The day was coming to an end. I only had 2 hours left until freedom, and my manager was super pissed at me. He came up to me and said, "I don't want to see you or talk to you." So again I took my orders and ran with them. Every time he would walk out of the office I would run to the bathrooms or outside to hide from him since he didn't want to see me, or when he would approach me asking me questions I would walk away not saying a word. I was a mute ninja for those 2 hours. I had only 20 minutes left, so I started to say goodbye to all the people and wish them the best, and hopefully after telling the owner how the manager isn't all that great, maybe he'll get fired. As I was clocking out, the manager comes up to me and wants to shake my hand. I don't say anything and I walk out. I drove off into the sunset. Monday. Today was my first day working at the new job. And when I say it's great, that would be an understatement because this job is amazing. It's so relaxed and chill. All of the managers are so funny and nice. There was 1.2 of the managers were doing Patrick Bateman impersonations to see who did the best one. Sunny days always have to be ruined by thunderstorms. My ex-boss calls me and tell me he posted the schedule for the next week and tells me I need to be there. I laugh in his face and tell him for $25 per hour and free food I'll do it gladly and hang up on him before he can get his response out. Tuesday was the last day he tried to make contact with me, but I blocked his number because I didn't want to hear him cry and complain to me. Thank you all for reading and interacting with me throughout this. I will post more stories in the future if you all want to listen. Again, thank you. 325 comments. Award. Share. Save. 256 people here. If you're enjoying this video, like, comment, subscribe, and turn notifications on. Story 2. $453. Malicious Compliance. Posted by you, Moms Got Probsbra. 5 hours ago. Oh. I can quit. Not without the final say. I can't. MOC. At my last job. My boss, let's call her K, hated me. She turned everything into a competition. She mocked me publicly. She took credit for my work. She divulged my personal medical information in front of all our coworkers. She was cruel. And needless to say, I avoided her as much as I could. So, now that the stage is set, here's the context. End of 2020. Coronavirus blazing. I had just had my first baby. I was a nervous wreck my entire pregnancy. Working from home and being extra careful. After maternity leave, which was disgustingly short BTW, I had returned to the office with some precautions set in place. My boss became crueler to me over those first few weeks back, and suddenly announced that, regardless of any negative feelings toward it, she had decided we all had to attend this training in another state. Keep in mind that there were mandatory 2-week at-home quarantines in place for anyone coming back to my state. But my boss fully planned on ignoring those quarantines and demanding we all would return to the office as soon as we got back. I was carrying a heavy workload and pulling a lot of the weight around the office. And I had some rank. So, I felt fully comfortable expressing my deep concerns to Kay, telling her that it was peak COVID season, and that I had a newborn to worry about now. I expressed I simply didn't feel comfortable going in the middle of a global pandemic and asked if there was a remote training I could attend instead. She firmly, adamantly insisted there was no remote training, and informed me that I could quit if I was that upset with her decisions. It's important to note that she insisted this for weeks, even claiming to have contacted the training organization to make sure. I decided on the spot after that meeting that I would be quitting. But I needed to check my boxes first, which took me a few weeks to figure out. Sometime after this meeting and her incessant insistence that there was no remote training, it finally occurred to me to check with the organization putting on the training and ask them to clarify if there truly was a remote training or not. I did. And lo and behold, there was, and they had been offering it for months. I asked him to email this information to me. Now to figure out how to use this valuable information. Right. Wrong. As soon as I stepped back into the office, Kay starts fake empathizing with me out of nowhere, in front of all our co-workers, saying she really wished she didn't need to force me to go to this training. So, I said, if you feel so bad, let me go to the remote training. She looked at me in surprise, and her face turned beet red. Before she could fight me, I pulled up the email with the information and read it aloud in front of all our co-workers. No one said anything. They just stared, wide-eyed at her while she blubbered like a fool. Long story short, after pulling that fast one on her, I pulled her into a private meeting and gave my notice. She was horrified because, as I stated prior, I carried a lot of the work around the office. But, like she said, I could quit if I didn't like her decisions. Woman shrugging, light skin tone. 32 comments. Award. Share. Save. 172 people here. If you're enjoying this video, like, comment, subscribe, and turn notifications on. Story 3. $243. Malicious Compliance. Posted by you, Eamon_Demon. 7 hours ago. I can't have weekends off as promised. No problem. MOC. I'm a delivery driver that listens to a lot of Reddit content to muster on throughout the long days. Shout out to KCC and Storytime. And some fast food stories reminded me of this malicious compliance from my high school years. So I was but a wee naive lad in my junior year of high school when I got my first job at good old McDonald's, which happened to be the busiest one in my state. I was excited to start working and actually earn money to pay for gas and leisure for myself on the weekends. I had recently moved to another city close to where I grew up and where all my friends lived, still very close friends to this day. And I grew up privileged with a $100 monthly allowance for gas to drive to school and such. It wasn't enough to actually have fun on weekends considering gas prices due to the distance I had to drive to see my friends. That was when I decided a part-time job would solve my problems until I graduated and went to college. So, I applied to McDonald's since they offered decent pay and flexible scheduling. Remember that part for later. My schedule when I started was 3 weeknights after school and Saturday or Sunday mornings. I worked this schedule for about a month and a half before I got sick of missing out on parties the night before I had to work the next day. It was draining me socially. I was working about 20-ish hours a week on top of school. So I was getting home late to do HW most nights and couldn't properly enjoy my weekends like I wanted to. I talked with my general manager and told them I wouldn't be able to work weekends anymore. But I'm more than willing to work an extra weeknight to make up for it. And they agreed. This went fine for another 2 months. And I got good at the job and became one of their more reliable workers since I was able to cover any position they needed me to. Then they decided to have a talk with me, informing me that I would have to start working weekends because they didn't have enough people in the morning rushes to be able to meet the McD's quota for service. I told them that I was told I wouldn't have to work weekends since I traded Saturday or Sunday for an extra weeknight shift. But they told me I would work only a few hours on some weeknights and would still be working the same amount of hours per week. I had no choice in the matter. I was pissed to say the least until I remembered their policy for getting days off. As long as you asked for days off in their calendar book 2 weeks in advance, it was a guaranteed day off. You guys can see where this is going. I maliciously complied and asked for every weekend off for the next 4 months in the calendar book. Sure, my paycheck took a hit, but I didn't care. Time with the boys was more rewarding than an extra $45 a paycheck. It wasn't until 5 months later that I got pulled into the office, and my manager asked me why I asked for all the weekends off for those months. I told them that I got the job because I was under the assumption that the scheduling was flexible. But I was told I had to work weekends. The manager looked absolutely defeated and tried to compromise for every other weekend. This was when I got another malicious thought in my head and said, okay, I guess if I had to. Cue malicious compliance part 2. This time, instead of asking for every weekend off, I asked for every other weekend off. Another month went by before they started scheduling me for weekdays only, but with slightly longer weeknight shifts like I wanted. I only got away with this because turnover rates were high, and I was able to work any position like I said. So I knew there was no way they were gonna fire me. I have many more stories from that place. And I just thought of another while typing this that I might post in Pro-Revenge. Thanks for reading. And please be kind to service workers. 21 comments. Award. Share. Save. 62 people here. If you're enjoying this video, like, comment, subscribe, and turn notifications on. Story 4. $4. 5K. Malicious compliance. Posted by you, Hyperquisitist. 1 day ago. The customer is always right. Lock. About 9 years ago I worked at a food service job within a retail store. This job was absolutely horrible, as I got written up for anything and everything I did. If I took my breaks, write up. If I didn't take my breaks, write up. I called out once with a doctor's note saying that I absolutely could not work. as my illness was highly contagious. Right up, this was my first time ever calling out. And I gave 48 hours notice. The second, and last time, was for my grandma's funeral, which I had requested off and was denied. I was written up then too. Any excuse my supervisor could find to write me up, he did. Being in high school at the time, I took this very personally and assumed that I had done something wrong. I worked there for 2 years, taking each write-up as a learning opportunity. However, I finally reached a point where I recognized that it wasn't my fault. And the malicious compliance began. In this job there were add-ons. And these add-ons came with an upcharge. I had customers complain to me constantly about not wanting to be charged extra. But normally they would just pay it and move on. One customer, however, refused to pay for the add-on, but wanted it anyway. I pointed to the sign which said that it would cost extra, and tried my best to politely explain to her that I can't give it to her without charging her. She demanded to speak to my manager. I happily called the manager over, as at that time the leader was also my area supervisor. Each day there was an overall leader which would cycle, but each department had their own supervisor as well. I'll call him Bob. Bob was employed through the retail store specifically. Regardless, I thought that surely Bob would have my back, as he knows the most about the rules that I had to follow. I was very, very wrong. After listening to the customer, Bob proceeded to yell at me in front of her, stating the customer is always right, and you are not paid to argue with her. Give her what she wants and do not charge her for any of it. He also informed her that I would be written up for this. And I was. From that moment on, whenever a customer complained about having to pay for an add-on, I didn't charge them for it. If they demanded their items for free, stating that they didn't like them or had a bad experience in the past, I gave it to them for free. After all, the customer says that they shouldn't have to pay for it. So who was I to argue? Of course, he meant that I shouldn't argue to the point of the manager being called. But he didn't specify, and I didn't want to be written up for it again. Nor did I care to follow a do as I mean, not as I say policy anymore. It didn't take long for the people who worked in the actual retail store to learn that they could also get add-ons for free if they complained about it. As at the time that they were ordering, they were technically customers, since each add-on cost between 60 cents and $1, and most customers wanted more than one add-on. The company was losing an average of $2 to $3 per transaction on the add-ons alone, not even considering the customers who got their entire order for free. Of course, $2 to $3 doesn't seem like much, but it was enough to catch the attention of my district supervisor, who I will call Anne. Anne was employed by the food service company, and her job was to oversee the branches that were inside retail stores. Anne was very nice and respected the employees who worked with her company, regardless of if they weren't employed directly by her company, as was my case. She first asked Bob about why our location appeared to be less profitable than other locations, and less profitable than it had been a few months previously. He tried to pin it on me, saying that I was stealing from the company by giving my friends and co-workers free items. Anne, understanding how serious of an accusation that was, insisted on speaking with me alone. I expected to be fired, but she instead asked me why profits had gone down. I explained to her what Bob had told me about the customer always being right, and how I had gotten written up and didn't want to be written up again. So I followed his instructions word for word. For the first time since starting this job, someone took my side. She agreed that not charging for those add-ons would explain the loss she was seeing, and that how Bob handled the situation was unprofessional and entirely against policy. Having Bob accuse me of stealing to protect himself was my last straw, and I put in my 2 weeks' notice that same day. HR had apparently taken notice to how Bob was treating me. As her exact words were, "It's about time. I'm glad you're finally standing up for yourself." With my consent, she altered some of the dates to make my end date be a week earlier than it should have been, since the schedule had not been written yet. To this day I think of her as my guardian angel. Shortly after my last shift, I was informed by my friends that Bob no longer worked there as well. Anne was so upset with him that she called his supervisor and launched an investigation into his behavior. As it turns out, I was not the only one he would write up without a legitimate reason. They were also incredibly upset that he directly caused an unnecessary loss in profits. He could not blame me for it, as it was his words. And many people corroborated that he had said the same to them at one point or another. I was just the first to maliciously comply with his request, thus bringing his behavior to the attention of someone in a higher position than him. He was fired, effective immediately. TLDR. My supervisor yelled at me for upcharging for add-ons, because the customer is always right. And in this instance, being right meant not having to pay for add-ons. I proceeded to give anyone who complained the add-ons for free, resulting in a loss in profits, and him getting fired. 250 comments. Award. Share. Save. 88 people here. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, and turn notifications on.